Welcome to Sports with Brad and Donald.
Oh no, one of us has to be the Bulldog. Every sports talk show has to have one host named the Bulldog.
Welcome back to Cartridge Space Radio. I'm Donald, once again joined by Brad.
Hello!
Brad, it is the gift-giving time of year.
It is.
You and I are categorically poor because of various life choices where we didn't decide, let's be billionaires. So we went to go shopping, but we don't have the money, mostly because our wives are like, why would you spend money on that?
Yes.
So we put together a pretend $150
Yes.
to spend and then surprise each other with the garbage we could find and present as treasures.
You know what? I'm just now realizing, now that we've spent a week working on and producing this show, it would have made more sense if, given the holiday spirit, we had gone shopping for each other. Instead of for ourselves. But, those of you listeners who are out there who maybe, got a card with some cash in it or got a gift card to various retailers or whatever, maybe looking for some ideas of what to spend it on, we came up with this little challenge this week where we had 150 pretend dollars, and the rules were buy a console and games for under that amount, and the console had to be from the 80s or 90s.
Yeah, we did that. Found out some shocking news about prices on the second-hand market that made $150 go from, wow, we're going to buy so much to, oh, man.
I think that was the real revelation from this week's show, and maybe something that we might explore at a later time, is the prices of used games have increased. And I'm not just saying that as like some guy who doesn't shop for old games or something. I've worked in used game stores. I've bought and sold a lot of things over eBay. I was really surprised by how much certain games that I was looking for that I expected to be cheap because they were very common and there was a lot of copies out there in circulation, turned out to be. It was a real interesting trend going on. Prices of older games have climbed in the last few years.
Yeah, I was completely shocked when I started down this road. I somehow ended up looking at Kingsfield for PlayStation 1, and that's even expensive.
Oh, man. That game wasn't expensive when it was new in stores.
And it wasn't good when it was new in stores. No. And now people are like, it's from the guys who made Dark Souls. We're going to pay large amounts of money for it.
Oh.
Let's kick this off. So I'm going to give you the first gift. Then the card here says from Brad to Brad. So why don't you open that puppy up, Brad?
All right. So I went out. I hit up the eBay. I hit up the Amazon.com. Half.com, where I used to buy a lot of my used stuff, is no longer around. I did not get a chance this week to go out to some local shops, which I had wanted to do, or some flea markets or even garage sales or anything. But I went looking for some Nintendo-made systems because I don't have any right now. And I've got a Genesis in a closet somewhere. I've got some games for it that are like the pride of my video game collections. Not a lot of great stuff, but the old EA Sega Genesis games look beautiful on a bookshelf. They're really well packaged. But I have all that. So I was looking for something I didn't already have, and I started looking for an N64. And I found one, came with 2 controllers, and it was $75, which that price was about what I expected. It might have even been a little bit low. I was thinking it would probably be closer to $100 to get an N64 with 2 controllers, but I found one for $75 on eBay from a reputable seller and free shipping. So that was half of my budget went to getting the system.
I would have guessed $100 for a N64. Although me personally, I'd be like, ugh. $75 seems much for an N64.
Yeah, I kind of wanted it because when it first came out, I was a PlayStation guy. So I didn't get an N64 when they were out until like later in its life cycle. And for a while I was kind of like, oh, N64 is bad. You should get a PlayStation because, I was just very partisan in the console wars when it first started. One thing that kind of thwarted my perceptions, though, is like if you wanted to buy a PS1 right now, I mean, you could probably get one for less than $20. I've seen them at thrift stores. I've seen them at like half price books. You can get a PlayStation relatively cheaply, whereas an N64 cost me $75. You know, kind of a big difference there. I guess in general, I have cheap tastes because, like, I have a Genesis that probably costs less than $40. I'm partial to the original PlayStation, and that's an inexpensive system, but I thought an N64 would be a cool thing to have. You know, I was hoping to find like one of the ice blue ones, but when I started seeing the prices, I just went for a regular gray one. $75, and that left me with $75 to get games with.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
Did you see how much the Donkey Kong Green N64 was?
I didn't even look, but I'm sure it was a small fortune.
Yes, that was a very limited run N64. My brother had it. I was like, oh, this makes my normal one look bad because you can see the insides of the green Donkey Kong N64.
It doesn't sound, you know, like it would be a great thing.
It looked really good. The game that it came with, which was Donkey Kong 64, is categorically crap.
Yeah.
But the console that they packaged with it was a good looking system.
Okay.
So, what cartridges did you get to smack into that N64 for hours of fun?
You know, I had a shopping list of ones that I wanted, and disappointingly, the budget was not there to get everything on my list. So I had to make some hard decisions. But the first thing I went for, it was a real easy choice for me, was GoldenEye. You know, we talked about that a couple months ago. It's a fun game, and, you know, I have 2 controllers with this system, so I needed something with some multiplayer. It's a game that is really hard to play on anything other than an N64 because it's really built for that controller, so it's hard to emulate. It's not even available as a download on other systems because of licensing issues. So I was like, gotta get GoldenEye. This is the only way I can play it. That set me back $23, which a little high. In my post-electronics boutique career, I worked at a local game store, and this was early 2000s. We were selling GoldenEye for less than $15. So that's gone up a little bit.
Are we talking manual in the box or just straight up cart?
Cartridge only. Everything I got was cartridge only. I would have loved to have gotten like boxed complete copies, you know, for collecting purposes. Especially, you know, for an N64, there's kind of that collector's appeal to it that you don't necessarily get with other systems. But it just wasn't in the budget. The prices for complete games for this system were up there. There's also some rarity. Like with a PlayStation game, the box is the case that you need to keep the CD in. So you're less likely to lose those. With an N64 game, it's like, got my cartridge, just gonna chuck this box wherever, who cares? 20 years from now, I'll go on eBay and really regret that decision, but right now, who needs a box?
Young Brad and young Donald were stupid when it came to preserving N64 cardboard boxes.
I did okay with my N64. My NES games, we used to take the game out of the box and staple the box to the wall as a decoration, which meant we kept them, but it meant that we were decorating our game room with like Iron Sword and Werewolf, the game.
The light switches by Excite Bike.
Oh, I wish I had a cool game like Excite Bike for my NES instead of Time Lord. But we're getting off topic a bit. So GoldenEye was my first purchase. It was kind of my big one. That left me with about $50. So the next game I wanted to get was Mario 64, which I thought was going to be inexpensive because everybody had Mario 64. And I did not expect to have to pay very much for that. I was thinking maybe like $10, maybe less. How much do you think it was?
Ooh, well, I would have guessed between the 5 and 10 range that you just mentioned, but since you said that, let's see, GoldenEye was 23, so that's more expensive, so it's got to be in the 18 to 20 range.
Cheapest copy I could find, and maybe this wasn't the best time of year to go shopping for used games. Cheapest copy I could find, $33.
A what?
Yeah, I almost passed on it. I'm not entirely sure that there's $33 worth of fun to be had out of Mario 64 in 2017. So I was kind of on the fence with that. Buying Mario 64 took Zelda out of my budget, so I had to choose between those two. Zelda was up around $40.
For Ocarina of Time?
Yeah, Ocarina of Time.
I imagine Majora's Mask is like $3.
Yeah, I would hope so. I'm not sure I would pay $3 for Majora's Mask, but yeah, I had to choose between Mario 64 and Ocarina of Time.
I mean, I have an opinion on your choice there. I don't know if you want to hear.
I'm guessing that your opinion is that I chose poorly.
Yeah, you were that Nazi in Raider, or the Temple. Raiders Lot. No, which one is it?
Last Crusade. The one you didn't mention.
I mean, their faces all seem to melt at the end of those movies, so...
They were Nazis. They all chose poorly at some point in their life.
Either you drank from the cup that you shouldn't have, or you opened up the Ark of the Covenant, whatever. you chose poorly. That's what I'm getting at. Because he's a magical elf boy with a pony.
And he can travel through time.
Mario doesn't even have a dinosaur to ride in his. How lame is that?
This also took Mario Kart out of the equation. That game was very expensive. That, I think, was selling for almost what it sold for new back in 1997 when it was new.
What is going on with Nintendo? They got the resale value of a Toyota.
Yeah, I know. You know, my Genesis, I don't think I could give away. But N64 wasn't the only thing that I looked at, and we might touch on this later. But yeah, all the Nintendo stuff that I looked at was all pricey. Now, you can tell me that I chose poorly, but keep in mind that the Zelda was more expensive than the Mario by about $7 to $10. And that $7 to $10 allowed me to buy a copy of WrestleMania 2000.
Okay, so I'm going to give you a pass on not buying Zelda because you got WrestleMania 2000.
Yes.
Those weird blocky head dudes.
Yeah, really fun wrestling game, though. I think my favorite part about it is that it has Billy Gunn in it when he was going by the name Mr. Ass, and he comes out to his entrance music of I'm an Ass Man, which is maybe the worst / best wrestling theme ever recorded.
And if viewers are wondering, Brad has actually talked about that theme song before, and he talked about it so much I had to cut it out.
So it's the first time that, it's been aired on the show.
I think you stayed under the limit there.
I still got $10 left after I bought those 3 games in the system. I had remaining $10, so I picked up for $4. I finally found a real bargain. $4 got me a copy of Top Gear Rally, which is a totally adequate racing game. I probably could have gotten a San Francisco Rush, but, for those of you who have been listening to the show every week, that was not going to happen.
No, I would have just stopped the recording and went upstairs if you had said that.
And then with my remaining budget, I had enough left to get WCW versus NWO Revenge, so that combined with WrestleMania, I had all the wrestlers from the late 90s, including Chris Jericho in 2 different games.
Wow.
Yes.
You must be a Chris Jericho super fan.
Well, I didn't think I was until I found myself owning 2 different games that he was in.
And you're like, why am I only playing Chris Jericho in all these games?
And why is he coming out to Billy Gunn's entrance music? Why is everyone coming out to Billy Gunn's music?
This is a hacked cartridge. Oh no.
I don't think they foresaw this outcome when they let you pick what music everyone came out to.
They totally foresaw that. So you hit your 150 with that varied selection?
Yeah, it actually came out to 151. So in addition to my magic $150 fantasy money, I've got to scrape the quarters out of my couch cushions or something and come up with the extra buck. But yeah, for $150, it got me an N64, 2 controllers, so I could play with a friend who you can just go to in 2017 and be like, hey, want to play some N64 games? And they're like, that's not a weird thing to ask me.
Their first thought is, oh no, the Zodiac Killer is back.
But yeah, $150 got me N64, 2 controllers, GoldenEye, 2 different wrestling games, Mario 64, and Top Gear Rally. So, not a bad haul, I didn't think.
Yeah, that's very solid. I'd like to point out I wasn't saying Mario 64 was a bad game, just in the scale of which is better than the other.
Yeah.
It's Zelda.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. You got some good fun, a quality racing game, I assume.
Yeah, solid.
You got the wrestling.
Double the wrestling.
It's like 2x wrestling. You got the Mario and
GoldenEye.
The Pew Pew shooting Well, I am now afraid that my selection is less spectacular than your mathematic gymnastics to get your 150. I've probably mentioned before that I like playing my PS Vita.
Yeah, you're the guy.
Yes, I am the guy. I am Vita player. You're welcome, Sony. Holding it down for you. My first thought was there was a system that the magazine showed, and they kept saying, yeah, it's coming to the US, it's coming to the US, and then it just never materialized. And that was the Wonder Swan color.
Oh, yes.
So I dove into the pits of eBay.
Yes.
And the cheapest one I could find is the boring white glacier shell. They have a bunch of like see-through shells that looked fantastic.
Yeah.
$50.
For the white one?
Yeah, for just the console. And if you've never seen this thing, it's got 2 D-pads on the left side of it.
Why don't you take a minute to tell us more about the Wonder Swan, because it's been a while.
So the Wonder Swan was a portable in Japan and Korea. South Korea, and it basically was a competitor with, it would be the Game Boy at the time, but it was more in line with what we would think of as a Game Boy Advance.
So this was late 90s?
Gonna say like 95.
Okay.
Was when I was really looking into it, like, oh, this has to come out in the US. It actually had a game come out in 2000.
Wow, that's...
And it had ports of Game Boy Advance games. Like, it had the Mega Man Battle Network. It's called Rockman Battle Network. And it had Mega Man 1, 2, and 3 on it.
Nice.
Back when... the Game Boy was still in black and white. So there was this little thing. It also had a black and white version. I remember looking at prices of the Wonder Swan color for import back when I really wanted one, and it was astronomical. So $50 isn't bad.
No.
So I'm down to $100.
Okay, that's pretty good though. You could get a lot for $100.
You would think I could get a lot for $100. So, the first one, because there was 2 games I really wanted for the Wonder Swan when it came out. And the first one was real easy to find, and it's the beloved Dinosaur Brothers Bub and Bob and Bubble Bobble. Now, Brad, you made me guess a price. I want you to guess how much you think a copy of Bubble Bobble for a portable game system is going to run you.
Now, without you having just forewarned me that these ended up being expensive, I would have guessed $12.
$29.84.
Oof! Oh, man.
For the beloved Bubble Bobble, and I do love me some Bubble Bobble, so I decided to add it to my list, which brought me down into the $70 range. And it looks really good, because I watched videos of all these, because there's ways to play it now, but there's no way to play it on actual hardware.
Yeah.
And it completely is on par with a Game Boy Advance, long before the Game Boy Advance showed up. So that's neat. It actually has pretty good audio coming out of it, which you don't think it would. And yeah, it's complete. Looks a little bit better than the NES version. But that was the one game on the Wonder Swan that younger me was like, oh, I got to get one of these just so I can have Bubble Bobble everywhere I go. Even though I think I had Bubble Bobble on the Game Boy.
Bubble Bobble for you is like what Pac-Man is for me. Like, if I have a system, I have to have a version of Pac-Man on it. It doesn't feel complete until I do. Because you never know when you're going to need to play Pac-Man. Or, in your case, Bubble Bobble.
That's completely true. It's like that thing that comforts you on whatever system you're on. You're like, nothing's good on this system. Oh, wait, I have Bubble Bobble. I'm happy now. So this next one I had never heard of before, but it was completely selected by its name because I thought the name would make you laugh. Its gameplay is basically bad Warcraft on a portable console. Back when that shouldn't have even been tried. It is SD Gundam Emotional Jam.
I didn't think you were going to have a title for this that was going to be better than Bad Warcraft. But yeah, Emotional Jam kind of gets me there.
So it's hailed as having really great music, and which it does.
You might even say that some of these tracks are emotional jams.
Yes. They just real on the nose with the naming convention, but it only sent me back $5.50 to make you laugh. I watched gameplay footage of it, and I was like, I mean, it's $5.50. I'm not losing much here, but this looks like really bad Warcraft. There was a game on the Game Boy Advance, I think it's called Orcs and Wizards, and it was bad Warcraft 2. I don't know why there was some people who thought, the best place for a computer real-time strategy is an 8-bit portable system. Now, the next one I was super interested in. I didn't know it existed until I dove down this. It's very Japanese. I had no idea what anybody was saying in the cutscenes, and there seemed to be a lot of them. It is called Super Robot Wars Compact 2. And it is basically Advanced Wars with Gundam-like looking robots.
Well, that sounds pretty awesome.
I don't know if you're an Advanced Wars kind of guy. I imagine since you're a strategy boy like me, you are.
Yeah.
I think that the Advanced War team had something to do with this because it really, really looks like Advanced Wars. And if I can walk around playing turn-based strategy with fun graphics, I will super do that. That was actually one of the reasons where it's like, I could just buy these two systems, get out of this for $60 and try this game out, and it probably would be pretty fun.
Solid plan, honestly.
It still might happen. I will get back to you on that one. Now, the next one, I've heard of the anime for this one, and I didn't know it had its roots this far back. It is called Hunter x Hunter. And it is basically a JRPG with very early Final Fantasy Tactics-like battles.
That sounds awesome.
I have no idea what they're saying because, again, none of these were ported to the US, but they looked like they're running around an island, basically overhead world view of standard JRPG, Final Fantasy-like. And then when you got into a fight, you had a 8x4 grid, and you moved your little mans around and picked attacks and did the battles. It looked really good, too. And I can't impress that enough. The Wonder Swan looked really, really good for the time, and it still looks pretty cool. That was $17.98.
Ooh, little steep. You could almost get a copy of GoldenEye for that. Or 2 wrestling games.
Portable systems that didn't make it to the US are a little expensive. That being said, here comes my next cheap game. Brad, what if I told you the Wonder Swan had a plethora of visual novels?
I mean, I wouldn't doubt you.
There's a game called Terrors 2, and I spent a whopping $5.50 on Terrors 2, mostly on the back of its wonderful TV ad, which is horrifically hilarious. But I want to read you what this game is about.
All right.
Are you prepared?
Yes.
Terrors 2 is an interactive text-based story with accompanying images that feature the following Japanese pop stars. I'm going to butcher all those, so I'm just going to skip. There are 5 Japanese pop stars.
All right.
The game's story is one of horror slowly sneaking into a Japanese school. The plot is revealed through 4 scenarios. The choices you make in the story will affect the paths you take. As such, there are numerous alternate endings, encouraging multiple playthrough. Terror 2 can connect to the internet with the Wonder Gate, so the in-game events take place at the same time of day as the player is experiencing. And the important thing on that is I learned that the Wonder Swan could go on the internet.
It could go on the late 90s version of the internet. It could log into an AOL chat room, maybe post something on Usenet, like in the X-Files forum or something.
The images that it shows for the that's supposed to give you terror, imagine if they tried to make a scary game on a Game Boy Advance and you're there with just pictures. And the last one, I believe, is my most expensive, and it's just kind of a give me because if I own this thing, I'm going to own this game. Final Fantasy IV for $30.
Nice.
And I mean, we don't really have to explain that. It's the best Final Fantasy there is.
We did an episode maybe a month ago where we said definitively that Tactics was the best Final Fantasy.
Okay, the best non-tactics Final Fantasy.
Well, okay.
Followed closely by 6, but whatever. But I thought to myself, while I'm playing these great video games, well, a couple great video games, I'm going to get hungry, Brad.
Yes.
So I have some money left over. I've got $1.18. So I got a Wendy's crispy chicken sandwich for 99 cents.
Pretty solid. My brother and I, back in 1996 when the game was still new, used to have what we would call Arby's Suikoden night, where we would play Suikoden and eat Arby's. It was not the most imaginative title for the evening, but that was a lot of fun. So yeah, I'm hoping you enjoyed your crispy chicken sandwich.
My imaginary crispy chicken sandwich was delicious.
We're so poor, we have to buy imaginary food with money we don't really have.
So that wraps up my adventure into the Wonder Swan. There's a very good chance that I'm going to own a Wonder Swan in the very near future since I clicked keep an eye on this one.
You know, there were some things that we passed up on that we also could have gotten with our imaginary money. I looked into Super Nintendo was going to be my other choice. And for $150, I could have gotten a Super Nintendo with Mario World, Metroid, and Zelda separately. And that would have gotten me up to $145. And that's my holy trinity of Super Nintendo games. Mario World, Super Metroid, Link to the Past. I really would have wanted to have added Street Fighter to that. I didn't think Street Fighter 2 would be very expensive, but it was $20. I did have enough money left over that I could have gotten Bill Laimbeer's Combat Basketball, which is pretty phenomenal.
Whoa!
I know.
Back up.
It was just,
What is Bill Laimbeer's Combat Basketball?
Bill Laimbeer's Combat Basketball is actually, as best as I can tell, the Super Nintendo port of Speedball 2 Brutal Deluxe, which was a PC and Genesis game. But it's basically basketball of the future, but you punch each other, and instead of a net, you're throwing the ball into a goal. And Bill Laimbeer endorsed it, and he was a late 80s, early 90s basketball player who was basically just a gigantic goon. He could play a little bit, but mostly he just assaulted people. And this was an era where they didn't really call penalties in basketball. So Bill Laimbeer would just go out and maul people and the Pistons would win.
This seems to check out.
Yeah.
That would have been a good get on the Super Nintendo front.
Yeah, it was a real tough call, but either way, I was really surprised with just how far your dollar did not stretch with Super Nintendo games. A cartridge-only version of Super Metroid, which I purchased at a Blockbuster when that game was still fairly new for $30, now costs $40. So it's actually appreciated in the last 20 years. Which is unheard of for most video games.
Well, I'll say it again. Nintendo is the Toyota of video games.
Yeah.
So when you brought this up,
yeah,
the first thing that popped into my head was, I'm going to surprise Brad by picking the ZX Spectrum, which was the European, Commodore 64 The cheapest one I found was $166.
Wow.
It came with the tape drive and all the cords you need to hook it up to a TV. But the seller was like, good luck finding the cassette tapes with games on them because time has not been good to cassette tapes. So most of these have been modded to run SD cards with all the games on them. But 166 was the cheapest I could find with the SD card, adapter, and all the stuff. There is a Russian version,
Ooh.
But next to all the listings, it said does not work.
I looked into, and it turns out that for the budget we allotted ourselves, you could not get a Virtual Boy. The cheapest Virtual Boy I saw was $175. So if you wanted to play primitive 3D games and give yourself eye damage, it just wasn't in our budget.
I played a Virtual Boy once at a mom and pop video game store, and they're like, don't play too long because you'll barf. I was like, whatever, old man. And looking back now, I realize was talking to someone who's younger than I am now. I was like, whatever. Put my eyes up to it and started playing a game where Mario's throwing a ball at Luigi.
Yeah.
It's like handball or something. And after about 2 minutes, I backed away from it, wobbled a few steps, and he's like, don't barf in my store.
It's actually the name of the store.
He had it out for a week, and then he put it in the back room.
Yeah. We had one at EB in 1999, and we laughed at it. We're like, no one's going to buy this, and why is it here, and everything. But, if EB just kept that in the back room, they could sell it for twice as much now. Probably not really worth the effort or storage space, but one route that we could have gone is you could get a Neo Geo Pocket for about $60.
Oh.
There's some interesting games for that if you're an SNK fan. So that might have been a way to go. Looking back on this whole thing, I kind of wish I had just bought a PlayStation and a bunch of PlayStation games because that's a lot more affordable and there's a lot of good options there.
You could get a PlayStation 50 copies of Felony 1179.
Yeah, that would have been fun. Just build a tower of Felony 1179s. For $150, you could probably buy every copy of Madden 97 that is, still in circulation and build a house out of Maddens.
Oh, I saw two things for the Wonder Swan I wanted to tell you about.
Yeah.
First, Romancing Saga 3.
Of course.
Which looks like a nightmare to play on a portable.
It's a nightmare to play on a dedicated console.
And this one's going to blow your mind, on a console that released in Japan and South Korea, Madden.
Who's buying Madden for the Wonder Swan?
Here's the thing. The Madden was $60.
Man.
I don't know if it's because it was a hyper limited run, which is what I'd have to assume, but Mega Mans were super expensive too. I really tried to figure out how to get one on the list, but I basically would have had to got rid of everything to get a Mega Man game.
I did, now that you mention, I did in our searches, I looked for some Genesis stuff because that's what I normally collect. There is a $90 Sega Genesis Madden game out there. It's the Madden Championship Edition, which was Madden 93, but it came with all the teams that ever played in a Super Bowl up to that point. So you could have the 85 Bears versus the 49ers from a few years later, or other matchups. So there's an expensive game if you want to blow all your budget on one copy of Madden.
Oh, you know how much I'd love to just buy really expensive Madden football games and make baskets and stuff.
Oh, yeah. If I was all in on my Genesis collecting, I would probably buy a copy of this game, but I can't justify it for $90, which is what I'm looking at right now.
Yeah, don't do that because you're going to have buyer's remorse.
Oh, yeah, immediately.
I'm not going to send this PayPal. He'll be fine. Because I'm finally getting rid of it. The curse that has ruined my family for years.
Why did I ever steal this from that Blockbuster Video?
He didn't really steal it. He rented it, and then he came back 2 days later to return it.
And the Blockbuster was gone.
Not even just closed. The whole building was gone.
Just an empty space, this weird old man off in the distance laughing.
I see you have the Madden.
One last way we could have gone is for about $60 you could get a Sega CD. For about $4 at a flea market, you could get a Genesis. And for $65, you could get the greatest titled Sega CD game I've ever seen, which is called Revengers of Vengeance.
Listeners, there will be an episode about Revenge of the Revengers. What was it?
Revengers of Vengeance, which I'm not even sure what that phrase means exactly, but it sounds like you're getting revenge on the concept of vengeance itself.
We're really going to play that game, aren't we?
It has Chun-Li in it, but since it's not from Capcom, I think it's just a different character entirely who happens to be named Chun-Li.
It's Li Chung. She does many kicks. It's her move.
Somebody in Capcom Legal is just hey, they took our copyrighted character. Should we sue them? And they're they don't have any money. What are we going to get from suing them?
It's on Sega CD. I mean, whatever. That's the system that came with Sewer Shark. It's done before it started. I did look at 3DOs, and boy, I did not know how many different companies made 3DOs.
I was not aware that there were more than just Panasonic, honestly.
Philips made one, and then there was another company that I think was just overseas. But was 3DO a game company that just licensed itself out to different hardware manufacturers?
I don't have the wherewithal to look up the history of the 3DO manufacturing and licensing layout. out, but let's just go ahead and say yes.
I'm probably going to end up going down that Wikipedia hole later tonight now that that question's in my head.
You know, the one thing that I think we could take away from all this is that video game collecting has really taken off in the last 5 to 10 years. And all the people our age that kind of came of age playing these games in the 90s have money now, except for us. And they can buy these things, and they're driving up the prices. All the knowledge that I acquired, you know, working for various game stores over a long period of time and having a pretty good idea of what things cost has been completely upended as game collecting seems to have really taken off over the years.
I guess thanks, Obama. We're pretend $150 poorer. There's a good chance I'm going to be like $100 poorer at the end of this. But no, it was fun. I mean, I'm kind of sad at the same time realizing that $150 is like nothing these days when it comes to vintage gaming. Also, game systems that we grew up with, seeing the word vintage next to them when looking on eBay.
Oh, man.
Really kind of hurt in the chest, right in the center.
Yeah.
I'm like, my left arm's going numb. That's okay, right?
What is worse, seeing vintage next to the game system that you played as a teenager, or turning on a classic rock station and hearing songs that you listened to in high school? Like, which makes you feel older?
When I hear the DJ, like, here's a classic song, and then they play Nirvana,
yeah,
I have very nearly punched a radio in the face, but stopped at the last moment, realizing punching the dash of a car is going to do far more damage to my hand than the DJ on the other end of the airwaves.
Or to the concept of time.
Yeah.
The worst is, like, you'll get the radio station that just plays classics, and, like, they'll go from, like, Led Zeppelin to Pearl Jam, and it's just like there's 20 years difference between those two bands, but it's irrelevant because, like, just those songs are just old. They're just in a big pile that says old songs now.
Well, in this week of Donald and Brad are really old, we reviewed old music.
Yes.
We are vintage talker people.
This is the episode that we're probably going to upload on Christmas Day, thereabouts. And my gift to you is to make you feel old and decrepit.
Unless you're younger than us and you're like, look at the old stupid people. I will never be old like them. Guess what? Time is coming for you, my friend. You'll be like, Justin Bieber isn't vintage on the radio.
Be that same classic rock station is going to go like Led Zeppelin, Pearl Jam, Bieber.
I don't know if Bieber will make it to classic rock. I'm not sure. They're going to have to start classic pop stations. All right, Brad. So that was fun.
Yeah.
How many of the things you found are you going to buy?
I was tempted for a little while, but if I could have gotten all the really big titles on my wish list, if I could have gotten that Zelda in under budget, I might really be thinking about that N64. Or if I could have gotten the Super Nintendo with the 3 main games plus Street Fighter, I might be looking at a Super Nintendo, but I think I'm probably going to just hold off and buy groceries.
All right, Brad. I think that probably brings us to the end of our classic holiday tradition of shopping with fake money.
Yeah. Next year we'll shop for each other. It'll probably make a lot more sense.
We're new at this. That does it for shopping. I am Donald. That was Brad. And we will see you next week. You're turning into an anime character. Your eyes are so huge.